Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inside Futsal episode number 10. And what a show we have today with one of the best guests I've been looking so forward to over the past couple of weeks, talking about two of the best games of the UEFA Futsal Euro 2022. I can't wait. All the way from Spain out here, we have David Tapia-Owens. I pronounced that right, correct?
Yeah, you got it.
I love it. I love it. I earned myself a cookie. Well, listen, David, you and your brother run the best futsal magazine that's ever existed. Only 3 issues in. I can say that with absolute authority. Tell us, OTC on the court, before we get started, where can people find you guys?
You know, the main sort of page we use at the moment is our Twitter. So if you search OTC_coach, if not, just on our website, that's where we sell the magazine through now. So onthecourtcoach.com. Yeah, if not, just get in touch with us on Twitter. We've got a very easy name, I suppose, to find. There's not very many of us, so yeah, I'm sure.
Well, I can absolutely say that it is the best magazine out there in futsal. So if you are someone who is a coach, especially a coach, player, referee, an administrator, someone who's involved as a volunteer, as a builder, promoter, or you happen to know someone that is, I can assure you 100% at £2, 2 British pounds, less than the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee, you will get the best content in magazine coverage in futsal worldwide. I can say that hands down. I will give you the £2 if you don't like it. That's how much I like the product. And if that wasn't enough, issues 1 and 2 are currently free online. So you're getting 3 magazines for £2 out there. And they do a great amount of work with charities out there. I think you guys had donated about 50 pence per to the Papyrus organization, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so 50p from every single sale will go to a different charity each month. So last month was Papyrus, who looked into mental health and suicide. And this month, because of World Cancer Day today, we've decided to go with Children with Cancer UK. So yeah, anything that we put up, there's going to be more stuff going on our shop this month. There's going to be a few different items. But yeah, we're sticking with that 50 pence from every single item will go to whichever charity. So if there's any charities that people have a close tie to, then if they can get in touch, and we'll look into getting and sorted as well.
Well, I love it. Well, we're definitely going to talk more about the magazine and content inside. And I assure you, everybody listening, and the numbers are growing on Spotify. We're coming on iTunes later on today. Thank you so much for the support here. We have this great, conversation series out here and with great guests. And with today, like I said, we're going to talk about the greatest futsal magazine on the planet. A little later on, go into depth on why it's the best magazine and what they do, how they did it, the whole 9 yards. But everyone came in to tune in about the UEFA Futsal Euro semifinals. My friend, you caught both games, and right off the top, how did you feel about that epic encounter between the Ukraine and Russia?
I think it was one of those, I think when you watch the game, it really does sum up that even in futsal, when you've got a game with not necessarily the technical or tactical level that we expected from the two teams, I think it was quite a low level game in terms of quality. And then to all of a sudden play with everybody's emotions in the way it did. I mean, those last 10 minutes, 15 minutes were just crazy, to even have my girlfriend, jumping out of her seat with those last few opportunities. That's what futsal is all about. Like, every game will be played through to the end. No matter what the quality was like throughout, anything could happen. And what a game with the background of the two teams meeting as well. I think it added to it a little bit.
Yeah, the suspense of this match was absolutely unbelievable. I literally was standing up in my living room for pretty much the last 15 minutes of the match. I couldn't get enough. I have a nice comfy couch sitting there. I could have been enjoying my nice cup of tea, but I was just, I'm on my toes like I was in the stadium. And I mean, the match was great. The atmosphere was fantastic. I mean, there's only 1,250 people allowed into the arena because of the COVID restrictions. But that 1,250 made it sound like a packed capacity crowd. Yeah. It was absolutely amazing. I would have absolutely loved to have been there. Everyone was making a big hype, before the match about Ukraine versus Russia, and the political situation that's going on the eastern border there of Ukraine and all the stuff that's happening. But, there was a lot to be made about it. But the reality is these teams know each other very well. They've come across each other in past tournaments. I think the last was Euro 2007. And at the end of the day, this was about sport. This was a futsal classic. And ultimately it was about the game. And I saw a lot of good sportsmanship. And ultimately it was just a classic out there. So, I mean, let's get through the match. I mean, 2 minutes in and Russia get an absolute, fortunate tip coming in out there. What was it like, off that, soft Sokolov shot? What was your initial take on that?
Well, I think, before the kickoff even started, I think we were all surprised to see Antonov and Robinho sat in the stands. I mean, that news just came out of nowhere. Like, I hadn't seen anything about that one. They kept that one really quiet. But, the next big player that Russia have had in this tournament would be Shishkala. But from there, Sokolov as well has been very reliable. He's been a great reference point for them, in their 3-1 system. And I think, Ukraine, when they saw that starting lineup, they would have felt they had chances. With all due respect to Paulinho and Nando, I don't think that they were going to, have that much of a scare factor as the other players. But for 2 minutes in, to get a goal, another set piece, by the way, which I've been tracking a lot of data on the set pieces, so it was good for me. But another set piece set to him and that little flick, the little nudge off Paulinho. I think it took a little touch off Paulinho. So, yeah, you take them, don't you? Any deflection.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we saw what happened with Russia just getting that goal, and they just, happened to control the pace, and defensively they were just solid. They were just, completely compact out there, and they were rewarded, shortly after with, it was the second goal, if I'm not mistaken, it was Afanasiev, if I'm not mistaken, and he followed up from that rebound, an absolutely beautiful throw from Putilov that was right on the money. The header just hit the bar, follows up, finishes. I mean, we hear a lot about, Hegita and Gita and all the amazing goalies around the world. Do you think that Putilov is really getting the respect that he deserves? With such an amazing team in front of him, it doesn't seem that people really think of him when they think of Russian stars.
Definitely, I think you've absolutely nailed it. I think that everybody assumes now that futsal is going in the direction of the goalkeeper being the fifth player in attack and having that shock factor. And in Spain, I know Herrero as well has had a lot of backlash because they didn't think he would be able to do it. And then, Putilov, to recognize as well, I think that, the first goal was arguably a mistake by Sipun in net for Ukraine. And the same again, that second goal, to take advantage of it was a bad exchange with, at that point, they were playing as a flag goalkeeper with Zvarik. And he was too slow to come off. Sipun's running on, and Putilov, I mean, he's just picked out the perfect throw. And, we'll get into it later, but that penalty save, come on, this guy's ridiculous. I mean, and going back to the World Cup as well, you have to think Russia did not concede many goals at the World Cup. It took penalties with Argentina for them to get knocked out. So, their defense is so solid, and I think it's built around Putilov, if anything.
Yeah, and I mean, he was nominated for, best goalkeeper at the Futsal Awards. So, good job on Luka and Mikko and the crew for nominating him out there, because I saw him and I'm just going, this guy's phenomenal out here. He's not called upon heavily like other goalkeepers, but when he is called upon, the man delivers. And certainly, as you alluded to earlier, that PK stop saved Russia and single-handedly brought them over, booked their last ticket over to the final. So, congratulations to a great performance there. We saw Ukraine, make a little bit of a comeback. Obviously, it was 2-1. It was a left-footed shot, low. I think it was Sergei that scored the goal. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was Sergei. Yeah. But then I think, in the second half, we've seen a lot of goals, of the tournament candidates, especially in the group stage. But this one in particular, if this isn't a top 3 nominee, hey, I don't know what is, but Niesov with this absolutely beautiful overhead kick that came off an incredible cross from Nando, who just nailed it. It was like a one magnet to another on his foot. Tell us about that goal and what did you like about it?
it was one of those, as I said before, I feel like up until that moment, the overall quality in terms of technical and tactical ability really didn't meet the expectations that we had in mind for Ukraine and Russia, who'd both been playing really, really well. And then Nando, the pass that's at about knee height, that's become really, really popular in futsal recently, especially from set pieces. People really find it difficult to defend against, and he's opened up his hip in a 1v1, and he's found that pass. I would potentially say I think he might have overhit it. I think he's hit it a bit too high. I think he was probably aiming for a little bit lower to allow Niazov to volley it. But I mean, come on, Niazov to pull that off in such a big game at such a key moment, it's just ridiculous. That scissor kick from a tough angle. And Sipun, to be fair, he's got across. He's done a good split save, but it was so close to the post as well. I love Horvat's goal, but I'd say that in terms of the scenario, Niazov might take all of the tournament for me.
Yeah, I have to go and look at all the goals from this tournament at the end and really see where I'm going to give my vote to. Horvat still has it. And I mean, he scored 2 absolute golazos in this tournament. But that first one, it was just this absurd futsal highlight reel that we're going to watch this goal 10 years from now and just sit there and go, ooh, that was so dirty and so nice to watch. But this one out here, if this isn't one of the highlights of the night worldwide on sports reels across the world, I think they need to shut down the networks, because it was just absolute world-class precision and just, I mean, the ability to have this coordination, to have the ability to adapt your body and just nail it on that short side out there. I mean, it was remarkable stuff. So
I think, and Abramov nearly showed him up about a minute later.
I know.
If that happened, I think that's it. I think he would have taken it. But yeah, what a goal.
We could watch Russia play all day. They were my tournament favorites to win. I picked them in Portugal in the final, and luckily we're going to get that. I wish I would have put down 20 quid on that selection, before the hand. Maybe I would have had a little change in the pocket. Who did you have coming into the tournament as favorites?
I was fortunate enough to go to the Spain versus Portugal game recently here in Malaga. And Spain just demolished Portugal, especially in the second half. They looked unstoppable. I mean, Lozano is just dragging the team along, and on that day as well, Ziki really, really struggled when they played here. So, I really did think that Spain would pull through. And not just that, for those who've read issue 3 of the magazine, we really did see Kazakhstan as big threats. And, maybe just because I saw that game, I thought Portugal were a bit less than they actually are. But yeah, obviously, Russia and Portugal, we were aware of. They would have been our 3rd and 4th. But, they've done the job. They've got it done, and fair play to them. They've been playing some good stuff.
Well, I can't wait for Sunday. I mean, we'll finish the rest of the recaps and really get into what's going to happen on Sunday. I think it's going to be one of the best futsal games of the year, hands down, not just because it's a championship, but because they're both 2 high-quality level teams, with different styles that scrap and claw all the way to the end. Let me ask you, towards the end, when Ukraine pulled one back, then they get the PK. Then they have one last glorious chance with about 20 seconds left. What were your thoughts? Because that was the most intense ending to any game of this entire tournament.
I think as well, if people want to watch another great goal from the Euros, I think, Bashkin's finish is really high quality. Shoturma, they finally figured out a solution for the 5v4. I think they were really struggling with Lebed and Siri at the back. They couldn't get shots, and they spun Shoturma into central position, and he's fired it towards goal, and Abashkin has just flicked it just slightly to lift it over Putilov. I mean, it's a great goal as well. And then from there, as you said, Abashkin's had another one, about 2 meters from goal centrally. It's just come at him at such a speed. I thought, head in my hands, I thought I was in. And then the final one again, they had Lebed at the back post with about 3 seconds to go. Russia were really on the ropes, 100%. I think that any other day, Ukraine could have got back into it.
Yeah, and I mean, Ukraine have finished as runners-up in this tournament on 2 previous occasions out there, and not too many people really gave him an opportunity to get this far. I certainly had Serbia finishing in 2nd place in Group A, but the Ukraine absolutely demolished them like a piece of unattended luggage at an airport. and it was just something else to behold. And when Ukraine ended up playing Portugal, and they dominated that first half, I had to sit back and go, whoa, okay, this team is for real. They are peaking at the right time. We saw what happened in the second round, and to get, against your sporting rivals and political rivals in this game, and the effort that they put, by the skin of their teeth, they missed out on taking this game to extra time. So we can certainly say to the entire Ukrainian team and all those fans, congratulations, because they're going to put a lot of fear in a lot of teams when they see them on the schedule moving forward. Where do you see Ukraine's next phase to grow and take that next step forward?
It's going to be interesting how they replace Shoturma. He's getting old now. He's been their key figure for years. But what I really do like about Kosenko, though, is the way that he's really maximizing that squad. You're looking at 90-second changes, and he's got 2 on, 2 off every 90 seconds. Their intensity was so high, and defensively they were so good throughout spells against Portugal and Kazakhstan. And, I felt a little bit let down today that even they ended up on 5 fouls quite early on, but they weren't even pressing as intensely as we might have expected. And I think although they built back into the game today, I think they really need to try and build on those other performances from the tournament and try and identify that and get players that are willing to take that new futsal approach of high intensity, especially off the ball. And if you can get players that are capable of doing that, they're the international teams that are going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, and I can hope, and everybody hopes that the situation on the geopolitical scale eases up and cooler heads prevail, because the last thing anyone wants to see is any sort of war, any sort of attacks and stuff like that. And beyond that, obviously sport is not even secondary. It's so much lower down the tier, but it can bring people together. And I want to see the Ukrainian league continue to emerge, and I want to see young players have the opportunity to play in a safe environment that's allowed to grow. And hopefully the Ukraine Federation, and they also have the Ukraine Futsal Federation working on their behalf to take it up to the next level. And I'll be honest, playing for a bronze medal match at the Euro, that's enough incentive for more investment out there, and hopefully we get to see that from the Ukraine.
Yeah, definitely. And it's going to be interesting anyway in that 3rd and 4th place game against Spain. I know Spain had a relatively easy job against them recently in some friendlies, but they were missing Zvarik at that point. They and Shoturma, and they really had Corson running the show. But it'll be interesting. I'm guessing they're just going to use that whole squad though and give a lot of minutes to the substitute goalkeepers. But yeah, I think a 3rd place as well would, because obviously I want Spain to win that game too. But I'd happily have Ukraine take that. And hats off to both Ukraine and Russia today for their professionalism. Every time they were asked about it, they really did. They didn't even comment about anything. It was purely sport-based, and that is the magic of sport. It can bring people together through any situation.
No question. At the World Cup, I was fortunate to see a few Russian games, and I was able to speak with the help of Alexander at the Russian Federation, whose English is far better than my Russian, which is absolutely niet. And pretty much they're just super humble, always wanting to talk. And the one guy you mentioned that was absolute class, earlier, not just on the court, who had a phenomenal game, but before the game, in talking about this and downplaying it, was Chishkala, who sat there and said, we know the guys in the Ukraine. We talked to them, and it's like they're friends, they're colleagues in the sport. And it's just about the game. It's nothing personal. It's just straight up business on the court. And that's what we like to see. As Steve Harris of Futsal Japan likes to say, a tip of the hat to Chishkala and the professionalism of the Russian players, coaches, and the federation. Always been top class with me, and showcasing that to the international audience today on the court and off the court. And yes, that pun was intended for the magazine. Now, Russia moving forward, getting to play Portugal. Let's go through this Portugal-Spain match. I mean, I didn't think halfway through that first half, I'm like, there's nothing that's going to top the Ukraine-Russia match in terms of suspense and drama. But boy, that second half was something else. Now, Portugal come into this game unbeaten in 31 competitive matches. I mean, they've lost obviously in friendlies and whatnot. Spain, they played 2 friendlies out there. But I mean, 31 games. It's impressive, dating back to the 2016 World Cup over down in Colombia. But they also beat Spain in 2018 and then eliminated them from the quarterfinals in 2021. Spain obviously looking ridiculously dominant, particularly in their last two games. It was just kind of like, oh, this is the Spain of old coming back out of there. What were your expectations coming into this match between these two rivals and juggernauts in world futsal?
You know, I did expect a lot more from Spain, to be honest. I think even with the 2-0 lead, you know, Portugal, I mean, I analysed the game as it was going on as well, so I was tracking all of the data. And I mean, the amount of shots that Portugal were getting off, and from dangerous areas, or what are deemed to be dangerous areas, you know, and I did expect a lot more from Spain, especially after seeing, like I said, that 6-0 recently against Portugal. You know, that was, for me, a tipping point. I thought that is it now. Lozano is going to drag this team through. You know, Ortiz putting in some of the performances of his life, despite his age. And all of a sudden, the squad effort as well, bringing Solano in as a dominant pivot to be able to have that reference point. I just saw Spain having too much for Portugal. But, you know, as they've done many a time, as they did at the World Cup as well, you know, Portugal stepped up. And to be fair to them, they absolutely dominated Spain. So hats off to them as well.
Yeah, I mean, we saw obviously, you know, Spain in the first half. You would have, you know, you couldn't have been blamed for mistaking that maybe a brick wall had been laid across the Spanish goal in that first half, because just defensively it was just solid iron, and Portugal were visibly frustrated throughout that first half. And just 17 seconds in the game, you know, we saw Raul Gomez, you know, open up the scoring out there, and it just put Portugal, you know, on their heels right off the top. But, you know, Spain, one thing that was really noticeable was how aggressive defensive they were. And of course, they fouled out with about, you know, 8.5+ minutes in the first half. You know, tell us, you know, what adjustments they made, because they didn't concede a single, you know, spot kick as a result once they got that fifth. You know, what adjustments did they make in order to kind of stifle Portugal after fouling out?
You know, they dropped to half court. And I think essentially it was also a key moment of the game by dropping so deep, you know, against a team with such weapons in 1v1, against a team that have such good shooters from the exterior zone as well, like Thiago Britos. We saw Thomas Passor as well having multiple efforts.
Well, he struck that post. I thought it was a goal for sure, but it just rang off it.
You know, and it was amazing to hear Fede Vidal at one point in a timeout saying, look, today everything is coming off for us, guys, everything. They just thought that the luck would drive them through, and unfortunately it just doesn't work like that. And I think that step back that the Spanish players had to take, you know, then all of a sudden the confidence that Portugal get by getting into their rhythm, lots and lots of successful passes, lots and lots of shots from dangerous areas, you know, that really does build you up as a team and creates momentum. You know, and Spain would have felt against the ropes. I mean, how many could have gone in that first half as well? There could have been 3 or 4 very easily. So, you know, I think the people weren't very happy over here, especially there's not a huge support for Fede Vidal anyway. But I think his failure to change at key moments was, you know, it cost Spain.
Now, do you see, I mean, the first half was solid for Spain across. I mean, Chino got that second goal where Andre Souza didn't even move. I mean, it was just like a nice shot, just nailed it properly. And they maneuvered the ball relatively well. But as you said, you know, they didn't make the adjustments necessary in order to hold off on this win and get into the final. Do you see, you know, do you see Spain continuing on in the same direction? I'm not sure how long the contract is, you know, for Vidal, but do you see him sticking on, going to the qualifying phase, leading to 2024? Or was this kind of, you didn't do enough, we expect to win championships because, well, that's what Spain has done for decades in the game?
You know, I think it's one of those, like, from an outside opinion, from what you see, like the Spanish Federation have always had their line of coaches, and there's always been the successor of the assistant to the previous coach, you know, and it's gone down that route. They've always been quite a tight-knit family. It seems to have just passed on the torch, you know. So I don't necessarily think he'll be under a lot of pressure from his own bosses. I think he's under a lot of pressure from the Spanish fans. But, you know, seeing some of the videos from their training sessions, like he really has built a nice culture within that team. They seem to be a really close-knit bunch. A lot of them do play together in their teams, and it did help with those players then being on court in their fours together. But, sometimes like the expectations are so high for Spain that I think it'll be a really, really big decision to make of whether they do decide to get rid of Fede. But I would assume then that it'd be passed on to either his assistant, or if not, the guys in the under-19 setup, Albert Canillas, they would be suitable to take over straight away.
Yeah, it seems, Spain probably has the largest depth of coaches worldwide, and they've expanded their style and education. We've seen the effect of Spanish coaches over in Asia in particular is just absolutely immense, at club and international level. And there's no shortage of coaches to fill a gap, if a gap, of course, does become available. But Spain, was just that second half. It was, the old adage is it's a tale of two halves. And we saw, you mentioned earlier, phenomenal performances from Ortiz. He was an absolute revelation in this tournament. Just enjoyable to watch every game. But his second half, it just seemed to just all fall apart for him. Bad plays, bad times, bad touches. Portugal got back because of an Ortiz foul on Bruno Coelho that got buried out there. What do you think of the second half with Ortiz, and kind of what went wrong for him?
Not necessarily for him. I think he had pulled a lot of minutes throughout that whole tournament. Him and Lozano were dragged on in almost every scenario, even when they were sat on their bench resting. If the opposition got a free kick in a dangerous area or a corner, they were back up and taking their bibs off and back on the court. And that all adds up. And it was really, really interesting, the mind games. I think if you want to watch the game back, I was really trying to track from the benches that mind game between when was Ziki going to come on. Because Boyes had a lot of success against him when they played the friendlies here. And to begin with, Ziki was not used a lot in the first half. And it was really interesting to see that mind game of when is he going to put him on? Is he going to put him on against Ortiz or against Boyes? And, in the end, it was costly, wasn't it? As soon as they took Boyes off, Ortiz on, he pinned him in that area where he always dominates. And, that goal was ridiculous as well. He got a shot away from nothing as well.
Yeah, the first goal, obviously for, Coelho, he's such an important part of this team. He's one of the most least talked about Portuguese players, but he's one of the most valuable. He scored the winning goal in 2018, to give them that first championship out there. So he goes down in Portuguese futsal folklore for the rest of his career. Just his work over at club level in Napoli, his national team work, 2021, and now this tournament, he wasn't going to miss that PK any day of the week. He just buried it up high, and a hat tip to him as well, because Bruno Coelho is not getting the attention that you would normally had seen in the past with Ricardinho being the star, and you obviously have a lot of young players with Ziki having the spotlight on him. And speaking of him, you were worried, or you're wondering when he was going to come on, and as soon as he's getting more minutes out there, it was only 3 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, when he scored the tying goal, and it was just something where Portugal were just flooding them out there, and I sat there and I'm watching him make this beautiful series of footwork. I actually called it Ziggy Zaggy Ziki, and it was just one of those things where the kid just, and he is a kid, 20, 21 years old, and he's doing what he's doing. It was just remarkable. What did you think of that goal overall? How did you think he handled it? Obviously he scored, so he handled it well. What would you have done if you're a defender, marking a player of that caliber?
I think an approach that you often see is the double team, only really in that circumstance. If you've got a dominant pivot like that, it would be to hold him up, one step further behind, just so you're aware if he does spin, then you can block the shot. And then whilst that happens, try and get another man across the block lines. But, I've never been a huge believer in Ziki massively. I've seen some amazing performances. He's only young, it's not going to be as consistent yet as he will be in the future, where he's going to dominate. But, I think if you look at the data that I've been tracking, the passes into him are very obvious. Could they cut off the passes into him more? And at the same time, he's very, very left-footed in the terms of he rolls inside, whereas a pivot like Solano for Spain, also left-footed, but he often spins towards the wing. So I think Ortiz is one of my favorite players of all time. And I've spoken to him before. He's an absolute legend of a human being. But, I think that time, I think his lack of concentration, I think he could have adjusted his body shape a little better there.
Yeah, and going forward, Ziki obviously getting the third goal. I love the play by Pauletta. He just turns around and just absolutely drew everybody towards him. Outside touch to, on the line out there. And then just Ziki was just right place, right time. Beautiful play to get it out. I couldn't believe Portugal went up 3-2 with a minute left. I was, that's when I sat down and I jumped out of my seat. And, obviously you have a Spanish background, I have a Portuguese background, so it wasn't going your way this then. But, you have more than a few titles, in Spain's favor over the years. They're the most dominant. Even if Portugal wins a few more tournaments down the line, Spain is just, ahead of everyone else. Now, the crowd, I want to ask you, I thought the Portuguese crowd that went over to Amsterdam to watch, a lot of those guys were there, a lot of girls too, by the way, in 2021 in Lithuania. I got to sit down with them. Phenomenal people. What do you make of the crowd in both the Ukraine-Russia game and the Portugal-Spain game?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be at that final in Slovenia. I say fortunate, I also left there with a broken heart. But, the Portuguese fans there as well were amazing. And, I love the Spanish fans, but the Spanish fans seem to be scattered more around the stadium at the time, or the arena. And the Portuguese fans were so condensed, and you could hear it again in the game. I think today they were mentioning there was more Spanish fans there, but I don't know. It didn't sound like
it.
that. No, not at all. And that does impact a team. It really does build up momentum. Sometimes you don't want to hear it from the bench. Like you can't hear a lot from the bench anyway. Like you want to hear it from the stands. And Ukraine, Russia as well. It sounds, and the camera angle I think makes it better that you can't really see as much of the stands. So it makes it sound as if it is full. It's a full house. And what a shame. I know it's been amazing, absolutely amazing. And you just wish to see what the Netherlands could have done with it, because I think the production has been spot on. I think it's been amazing. I think it's been really good.
It's the production that the KNVB and UEFA have done for this tournament, I think, has been the best I've ever seen in futsal. And it's just everything from the design of the court with the beautiful orange frame. It's not generic. It's something that stands out. The DJ culture, because we all know that, the Netherlands is massive when it comes to electronic music like house and trance. And I'm a fan as well. So, even the horns, we were making fun of the horn in Lithuania. It sounded like a tractor from the 1930s or an old train. And then you're coming off, you feel like you're at a music festival with 80,000 people every time a timeout with that horn comes in. It's the little subtle things. The DJ has been absolutely spot on in both arenas. I just love what I've seen from the tournament, and it's an absolute crime that we couldn't see a full house. Had they allowed the full house, I would actually be there, watching the games and sitting there, probably wiping the sweat off my forehead from two intense games today. But I just love it, and I hope we can see more futsal in the Netherlands. And I keep saying that maybe a Final Four, Champions League would be fantastic out there. But goodness, my tip of the hat to those guys. Is there anything in particular in the marketing that you really felt has stood out as truly elite, world class, and that other tournaments may wish to implement in the future?
To be honest, I think that their social media presence has been real good. It's been like some of the videos we've seen, not just necessarily from them, but also I think the teams have really engaged with it this year. So the Finnish video that they did was incredible as well.
Super fantastic.
Yeah, I think just overall, they also did the program, but just like we're saying, just the product, when you're watching it on TV and you see the lights go off, even in timeouts, and they're blasting out the electronic music, like, come on, that gets any crowd going, and I think it's one of those that whenever something goes bad, I think a few people have complained about the center circle as well. You can just see a little faint line. People jump onto social media to complain about such little details, but we never go on social media and really promote how good the overall thing has been. It's been just a joy to watch. It's been a really good product overall.
Yeah, the tournament from start, and I mean, we're not finished yet, but we do have the third place match and the gold medal, of course, on Sunday. Honestly, this has been one of the best tournaments, period. Maybe one of the best Euros of all time. I take it you're a fan of the tournament moving to 16 teams?
Yeah, 100%. I think at the end of the day, that the teams have justified that they should be there. I think there's also other teams as well that could easily have had a shout of being there. You know, and it's one of those that it gives everybody a fair chance as well. I was never a fan of the 3 teams in a group. I think it's awful. You know, the UEFA Futsal, before it was the Champions League, used to be a similar format, and I don't think you necessarily get the best teams going through if they just have one bad game or stumbling on a little hurdle. I think it's a fair way to do it. 2 teams go through, you know, and let the quarterfinals onwards do their magic. So yeah, well, I've loved it.
Now, in your opinion, I mean, we saw a definite increase, not just at the World Cup, but also, you know, through this tournament and teams like Georgia and Finland and everyone stepping up. I even thought Slovenia was quite solid as well. You know, Slovakia had a nice run of it. When do we move to 24 teams, in your opinion? How many years off do you think we're away from 24 teams at the European Championship?
I think you do have to be a little bit careful, though. Like I'm saying, although there are other teams as well that could put a claim into also should be there. You know, France have been good in recent years as well, and they did well in the last Euros. You know, but really looking into it, is 24 teams. How much does that lower then the quality of the product? Are we then going to get games with 5-0 score lines, you know, and upwards? And I think you've got to be really careful in terms of that. Yes, it's good for promotion in terms of getting a wider audience, but then will the crowds drop? You know, as we saw in Lithuania as well. I know there was very little crowds, and we need to make sure that we're filling out arenas just to make the product look even better.
Yeah, I mean, eventually we're going to have to see it move up. I'm just wondering if it's going to be within this decade. I would say it's got to be towards the end of the decade that you're probably going to get to 24, unless the quality of the teams moves up exceptionally, and that comes with investment. You know, you mentioned France in particular with the great work they've done. I love watching the highlights from the French Federation and how they do futsal, and the street culture that they have there is only going to tap into it more. You know, the DFB, the German Federation, the investments they've made, you know, the new Bundesliga, sadly COVID's kind of, you know, prevented a bigger launch from happening, but they have full-time employees that are just, you know, ahead of, in terms of investment of 95% of European nations. I mean, and I'll exclude, you know, Spain from that one. But I'm really interested to see what this decade brings for European futsal development and UEFA's investment at the U19 level, the women's. I want to see more women's events and some youth events for them. But I'm thinking the 24 teams comes maybe towards the end of the decade. But for now, this 16-team format, been some phenomenal games. I can't wait for the next tournament. Now, one question I do have, though, is would you like to see the tournament every 4 years or go back to every 2?
Oh, come on, man. I think every 2 years. I mean, now we've got that huge wait until the next big tournament. You know, I think it's one of those. I know in football they're trying to get a World Cup every 2 years, and I've been against that because of the loads of games they have. But I think for futsal, why wouldn't you create these tournaments that are going to engage a lot more people across countries? You know, at the end of the day, people support their international teams more than they do clubs, in my opinion. You know, they can really jump on board. I'm sure there was a lot of Dutch children who would have either loved to be there or they loved being there if they got to watch the team. And that creates idols, it creates heroes, and then people look up to that, and it's only going to help improve the sport. So I think it's a no-brainer to go back to every 2 years if possible, and really build from there.
Yeah, hopefully Laurent Morel, the head of UEFA Futsal, is watching. I think he's a little busy with operations. Great guy. Bring it back every 2 years. I love this tournament so much. I can't wait to 2024's World Cup. It's too long. It's too long for me. So it's interesting. Now, where would you? Let me ask you. Where would you host the next UEFA Futsal Euro if you had your chance?
I think it's one of those. I think at the end of the day, my head is saying give it to another country like Holland, you know, developing country. Imagine Finland, what the production they could do. Now, my heart is saying a place where you might be visiting for the Copa España, which is Jaén. If you look at the Olivo Arena that they've built, I mean, that could be madness. I mean, you could talk about big crowds potentially, depending on location. But yeah, like I said, it's one of those. It's head and heart. My heart says Spain to pull off another big one, but head, let's try and build other countries. I think at the end of the day, I think England have facilities to do it, but obviously it's a touchy subject of whether the English want to get involved in hosting a tournament. Never mind having a participating team.
Yeah, let's make sure they get their teams back first and foremost, and let's make sure they get a women's team before awarding them a tournament. But I agree, if England were to host the arenas, I mean, could you imagine the O2 Arena with futsal?
Oh yeah, not only that, we've played before at the Copper Box, which was built as part of the Olympic Park. The Copper Box is a great place as well. I'm sure you could. Now, I do worry about ticket sales. I know that at the end of the day, like, it's been relatively small crowds across the domestic leagues here in England, sorry, but in the Copper Box, that could be amazing.
It'd be something. I've always enjoyed the Balkan hosted tournaments just because the fans are rabid. I mean, the Serb fans, it was just wild to watch them in their home, and it was like, okay, this is futsal country.
The Germans as well. They could put a good project together. The Bundesliga has looked good. It's looked like a good project so far. So.
I would love to host it in France or Germany. I'd like it in Germany because that way every fan could fly over to Frankfurt. You Europeans are so lucky with your low cost airlines. I was talking over to Damon Shaw. He's like, yeah, mate, I got a flight for 30 quid. I'm like, you couldn't get an Uber for $30 halfway across Toronto. And I'm sitting here and, going cross border on a flight. So, I'd love to see Germany do it. I think, whenever they organize something, I was there for the 2006 FIFA Football World Cup, and that was just a world-class event from start to finish, full safety, great arenas, great everything. I'd love to see Germany get it and do something. But if Finland were to get it, you're not going to get any complaints off me. Mikko, the job that he did out there, now he's stepping back, maybe going to work on Futsal Planet and take a little bit of the workload off Luca. Who knows what he's up there? But do you anticipate Mikko moving forward, in another coaching role sooner than later, or do you think he takes a season off?
I obviously think, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of clubs that want him there, especially in the Spanish league. It'd be interesting, the money's in Russia, if people did want to go that way. I don't necessarily think he might take another international role. I think he's done his job. I think he's so highly respected in Finland. It'd be really interesting to see. But obviously, I think he'd be successful wherever he ended up, no matter what. I mean, what he has done with Finland has just been phenomenal. And, that video where it showed as well how some of the stuff is player-driven. Although it's player-driven, that still comes from the leadership at the top. Right?
Absolutely.
To build a culture like that, of watching games for 3 hours after you've just played it, it's madness. Like that's what you want. Like the detail that they were picking up, and it only helped them get better and better. The culture he's built there, hats off to him as well.
Absolutely. And it was interesting when I went to Helsinki just before going to the World Cup in Lithuania, people actually knew what futsal was. They're like, oh, you came from Canada. And I said, yes, I'm going to the Futsal World Cup. They're like, oh, yes, we have a team here in Finland. I'm like, yeah, I'm aware. And so it was, I didn't say, that I was working in the sport and enjoying it, but, it's a blueprint for an FA, particularly with limited resources. You look at the English FA, nothing's unlimited, but the English FA could outspend half the UEFA nations with their budget. So, everything Finland's done, hopefully this trickles across all of Scandinavia for some increased investment out there. And I just can't wait to see it. Finland gets to host an event. And I'm pretty sure their FA will put in a bid for the next Euro. There's no doubt in my mind about it. But it'll be exciting. I know we're always talking about the next tournament, but we still got to talk about this tournament. Finals, Portugal, Russia. What do Russia need to do to win the championship?
They need to get their physio sorting out Antonov and Robinho, 100%. The role of Antonov, I mean, if we look through the data side of it and away from the data, data-wise, we've got the weapon of a shot that he has, the amount of opportunities that he creates and that are created whilst he's on court. And then the leadership role. I mean, that footage of him before that second half, grabbing the tactics board and, dragging his men, you here, you here, you here. That'll stick with me for a long time. And, today I wasn't that impressed with what they've got without him. Although I've been a huge fan of Abramov in the past, Shishkala as well has been playing really well. Sokolov's been a great pivot. But I don't know. I think that they'll struggle. I think that, Eric, João Matos, they can defend against a pivot quite well. So you need to have other options. And, without Antoshkin and Robinho, I think they will really struggle. I can't see anybody other than Portugal taking that, even with those two.
Yeah, I mean, Robinho is just, Emanuele Riso was on the show. I love this analogy he made. He just called him the magician that shows you the trick and still manages to fool you. And he just, what's going to come. You know what he's going to do. And he does it every time.
Wiping his shoes. He basically starts saying, look, I'm going to take you. It's madness.
Yeah, it's like the matador charging the bull. That's kind of how I look at him doing it. And Antoshkin's had a breakout tournament. Not a lot of people really talking about him. A lot of Russian stars obviously getting more attention, but his goals out there, I mean, have been absolutely instrumental in Russia. Getting to where they're at. Hopefully, the injury is not too serious. Where do you think Russia has been their absolute strongest? Has it been, through the deliveries of Antoshkin being at the right place at the right time? Has it been the solid, court-to-court end play of Chishkala? Where's their expertise really come in?
Interestingly, if you look at the stats as well, they've not scored in transition, so that defense to attack. But equally, they've not conceded any goals in transition. Now that's a huge part of the game now, all of a sudden. And if you're just keeping that at zero, it just shows that you're dominating the tempo of the game, in my opinion. You're really, really getting stuff right. And a key data point for them as well has just been the production rate from set pieces. Russia and Spain, that's why I really thought that they would be the two to go through from these semi-finals, has been purely based on the increase of the set piece again. It's re-emergence in futsal, and they've been devastating. The amount of shots they even produced today from set pieces was just off the charts. And, this has been the tournament of the set piece and the left footer. I think there's going to be some interesting stats about how many left-footed goals has been. And, that's it. With so many different weapons, that's the benefit you can have.
And the key to Portugal's success, where do you think that's going to rest?
At the end of the day, I said that he's had some really quiet games in the tournament. But, Ziki, when he stepped up, it was that opening game as well, where Portugal didn't look too good. And then all of a sudden they managed to connect with him. And that 3-1 system with Ziki, it was top quality, And it's been really interesting seeing the youngsters. If you had to pick the 3 standout players for Portugal, you couldn't look anywhere else than Ziki, Afonso, and Tomas. The 3 of them have just been sensational. So.
Yeah, the future of Portugal looks bright. And it's just, they're the scrappiest team in world futsal. Just when you think, they're done, teams give them a little bit of they give them a millimeter, and Portugal comes and takes the full meter out from them. And I don't want to talk too much about him. He's a friend of mine and a guy I respect so much is, George Braz, the work that he's done, coming now off, 4 consecutive, futsal international coach of the year, reigning European champion, reigning world champion, and an ability to repeat out here and have the true ultimate golden generation definition for his team, for his career. What have you noticed from George through his evolution as a coach, and what has he really done to make this Portuguese team not just a winner, but believe that they're unstoppable?
The one thing I have noticed, and I've seen this more so in this tournament, not so, and in the friendlies when they were here in Spain. It's been that trip away from the tactics board, and some of his timeouts or any little periods, it's purely psychological. He really knows how to get the best out of his players. He's giving them little bits of information that's going to pick up, their psychological corner, as they'll call it in the FA. That psychological corner in tournaments is proving to be what matters. The players really then believe in what he's telling them. And I think that above everything, tactically, you've got to be spot on. But I think he trusts the tactics at training. And when he gets to a game, he will try and make the little adjustments, but make sure that psychologically they've got that head start. And how many times have you just said, have they just managed to tip that game? 1-goal wins against Ukraine. There you go, 1-0. That could have gone either way, that game as well. The opening game could have gone either way, but we really know that Portugal are going to drag out that result. So.
Yeah, it was remarkable. I mean, yeah, I liked what you were talking about during his timeouts. The one that always stands out to me is the quarterfinal versus Spain, where he sat there, and I felt bad for that board. He must have threw it, broke it, tossed it, whatever. And he's a very cool, calm, and collected coach, but when he means business, he lets people know, and he got them fired up, and Portugal were able to, pull it off in extra time and do it again here. And there was a time where Spain just had Portugal's number at any tournament. You sat there, you saw Spain on the schedule as a Portuguese fan, and you're going, oh, great, them again. And now it's been, 3 tournaments in a row that Portugal has, finished them off. So, I mean, you mentioned the young players from Portugal. How important is it? You're a big person when it comes to data and statistics. If there is a key number in terms of age, average age, or the mix of veterans versus young, have you noticed any statistics or data that kind of supports, this infusion, or when the ripe age is?
I've not necessarily looked into age before, and it's quite interesting that my journey with data has only been relatively recently. As a player as well, I was always off the cuff. I really believed in street football. I believed in players learning their trade in the playgrounds, and I still believe that. I believe that players learn more in the playground than they ever will, with a tactics board and with data. Data's that little finishing piece now, I think, that's essential. But overall, we're seeing these players come through at such, I say early ages, but 20, 21. And they're really doing their job and meeting expectations and beating expectations. And, the way that Antonio Perez, who should have been in the Spain squad, in my opinion, he performed against Portugal. He was one of the best performers. And I think Fede Vidal got a lot of criticism for that decision. I think he didn't trust Antonio as much as George Braz would trust his youngsters. And, it's all in hindsight saying, well, he could have done this, he could have done that. But, if you're going to build a long-lasting legacy, Spain won the under-19s Euros comfortably. Why not start trusting those players?
Oh, no, that's a great analysis of it. You have to go and cycle them in. And when I was speaking with George after the semifinal and asked him, what the key was, and it was always keeping the veterans sharp with a fresh blood infusion. And every single tournament is a new cycle. He's just a relentless coach out there. And I'd like to see, what Spain's under-19s in the future are going to be. Are there any, key players from the under-19s that, are just on the verge of making the team, but not quite, that you think everybody should be looking forward to seeing?
As I just said, Antonio Perez from Jaén. He's running out his contract this summer, so it's going to be interesting to see where his next move is. So he's currently a student at the University of Jaén as well. So I think, I'm not too sure when he finishes his degree, but I think that will then impact on when he moves to, one of the big clubs. As much as I love Jaén, but I think at the end of the day, where the money is, he's going to have to go there. In futsal, that's what you unfortunately have to do. So definitely keep an eye out for him. Also, the goalkeeper Chemi, I think he's going to be a great player. And there's also some players who aren't necessarily deemed to be young, but I'd love to see them be given more chances. Mellado proved himself at these Euros hugely. He was a key part of that team. Catella as well is relatively young, and they're the players we've got to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm going to be attending the Spanish Cup. Hopefully we run into each other and get to share a beverage of sorts in Jaén. And, maybe it sounds like an interview. I got to pick up this U19 superstar coming up. So if I got to ask you, Russia or Portugal, final score, who's winning this title?
As I said, we're going to go off the assumption that Antoshkin's not playing, so I'm going to go I think it's going to be a close one. I think it'll be a 2-1 Portugal.
I like the 1-goal result. I'm going to go 3-2 Portugal. And you know what? I'm going to say during regulation. I'm not even going to go to extra time. Yeah, although I want extra time. I want as much futsal as humanly possible.
We've not had any penalties yet as well. I know the lottery, but, it's good to watch.
Don't jinx it. Why would you do such a thing? Well, let me ask one question. Thinking about, playing time out there. Do you think that futsal should go to the 2 25-minute halves? We saw what happened with the economic collapse, about 10 odd years ago, and Russia, changed their rules to increase the time on the court. How do you feel that would affect international and club futsal if we switched from 220s to 225s?
I think at the end of the day, the option is there, especially with squads of 14, depending on the competition now. I don't think it'd be the right move. I think there's a lot of studies out there suggesting that younger audiences have very little attention span. So that, that football's having the same issues, that people don't want to watch 90 minutes and the rest of football because it's too time consuming. So one of the magic parts of futsal is that intensity that 20 and 20 offer. Stop clock. But yeah, I think if anything, you could even cut down the time because it's still an hour and a half by the time any game was finished. Interesting, I don't know if you've noticed as well in these Euros, it really has dragged on. It's been about an hour and 45 from start to finish in some of these games. So, if we're going to draw a younger audience, I think we have to try and avoid the longer halves, definitely.
You think a 2-hour broadcast is essentially kind of the sweet spot for the sport?
Yeah, I think it's one of those, and we have to look at the future fans of the sport. Now, what do they want? They want heroes to look up to. They want those amazing goals. They want the overhead kicks. They want Horvat's goal. They don't want to sit and watch, for them, the boring stuff over and over again. They want a short product that's going to be exciting. And that's, for me, what futsal offers. It's that excitement. It's that quick pace. Even though it's stop clock, they get on with it. It's quick. Football, I love football as well, but it's really, sometimes, I'm a huge Man City fan, and I go and watch that relatively recently as well against Southampton. And, Southampton wasted half the game. I think Man City ended up having the ball in play for about 50 minutes in the whole game. Come on. It's just, nobody wants to watch that. So let's get the excitement. Let's keep it, and keep it nice at 20 and 20.
I like it. Well, we got through the semis and the final preview. Let's talk about On the Court magazine. And as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, it is the best futsal magazine out there. Now, you're 3 issues in. As I said, the 3rd issue now available is only £2 less than a Starbucks coffee, and issues 1 and 2 are free. And I think there's a stats report as well.
There's some stats reports. They weren't available to download at the moment. At the time, we emailed those out to subscribers, but we're probably going to upload everything we have onto that shop element, even if it's for free. It'll all appear on there at some point.
Well, tell us about how you started this. You started with your brother John, who likes to be called Juan, but we're going to call him John in this broadcast. We're chirping him because he's coaching football right now out there. He's working with the Oxford goalkeepers. Could have joined us on the show, but I know he's going to listen to it and he's going to have a laugh when we chirp him a little bit on it. So tell us how about you and your brother came about in creating On the Court magazine.
Yeah, I think just before I talk about that, I just wanted to get this on record as well. I just wanted to say, a huge thank you to you as well for every retweet, every shout out. The impact that has had has been phenomenal. Without people like you, we would not be able to carry on with the project, But yeah, so originally On the Court was born. I was not involved actually to begin with. It was my brother and John Curran, who's one of his players at Bloomsbury. And they began as webinars during the first lockdown. So they had some amazing guests on there, like Marc Tolra, the Spanish player as well. And, from there, then I was still working as a teacher and a housemaster at a military college. But, we had more and more lockdowns coming. And I said to my brother, well, why don't we look into making some written content, like a magazine? I said, there's not a lot of coach education in English. We're fortunate enough that we can read the Spanish stuff. why don't we try and pass that on? And then we left it a little bit. We got talking. We said, well, what have you been doing in your spare time? I said, well, I've been analysing teams. I'm just making reports of teams, and I might send them to coaches, like professional coaches, and say, here's what I know about this team. And he said, oh, that's funny. I've been doing the same thing. And we said, well, why don't we just post it out in a magazine? And we went back to the magazine idea, and then, yeah, that's how it got born. We said, let's just try and grow the community. And yeah, that's it.
I love it. No, I mean, every issue is just, number one, it's super attractive. You know, I mean, one of my first jobs, you know, when I was younger, I worked for a football magazine here in Canada. And, you know, that was an era of, you know, you're grabbing the paper, getting the ink on your hands. It wasn't really top class stuff, but, you know, with the evolution of, you know, Adobe and all these other, you know, services out there for graphic design, it's just so well put together. And it's funny. I mean, I look at the color scheme, and you got the blue cord of the futsal, which I also, you know, implement with Inside Futsal. You know, where was the idea for the design? And let's be honest, you wanted to make a real sexy and attractive magazine. What was the real, you know, how did the talks for the design come out? I was really curious about that.
You know, to be honest, you've got the wrong person for that element of it. You know, I'm normally the guy, I've got loads of ideas. I'm firing out ideas. This, let's do this, and this. And I just try and drive. Once I know an idea, I'll drive it. But, you know, John's the man in terms of design. It's quite funny that it actually linked quite well with the team that he coaches. It used to be called Pro Futsal London, and it was a similar color scheme. So it was that dark blue, light blue, and white, elements of white. So, you know, that's all of that part is down to him. He's an absolute genius in terms of design. And to be fair to him, for you to ask him, he'd say he's completely new to it. We've taught ourselves Photoshop from scratch, basically. He's got a history with it because he's an architect, so he knows his way around software and design. So yeah, he's the genius behind the design part. But yeah, the color schemes, you know, we've looked into changing it recently, but we kind of like it. We couldn't change it up. We felt too attached to that color. So.
No, I like it. I like the light blue of the cord and white. I added black just because I like the color scheme. I like it's almost like Estonian flag colors out there. I was really taken by that when I went to visit Tallinn. Now, there's so many different things you guys talk about. I mean, we talked about obviously the graphics, how it started. The Euro preview was phenomenal. I enjoyed it so much. People should still read it, even though we have 2 games left in this tournament. It's just an enjoyable read out there. Now, you mentioned, I think in this latest issue, you had talked about pivot play. You mentioned Lozano, who's one of the greatest players out there. How do you decide on which subjects to tackle?
You know, originally, I mean, we've set out a 6-month plan. Like, we sit down and we speak a lot over the phone and on Zoom and whatnot, and we try and decide an overall topic and what we can do. I think at the moment, we're still trying to find our feet. We're still trying to find out who our audience is and who do they want to read about, which teams do they want to hear about, which new teams do they maybe want to hear about. They might have heard about them a little bit, but they don't know too much about them. You know, so we really try and find that balance of, with the pivot play, we want to target new coaches, people who maybe have never heard of futsal or have heard a little bit. So can we give them something to read about? And then it's that tough challenge of, okay, well, Lofano is a relatively famous name in our sport. There's still a lot of English people that might not have heard about him. How can we create futsal idols? So that's our second part.
Absolutely spot on.
You know, and then also just out of passion, I mean, my first ever article was about Jaén because of one of my favorite coaches, Danny Rodriguez. You know, and he loved it. He got in touch with us straight away. He absolutely loved it. You know, just because it was a symbolic team to watch when they were the first Jaén team to win a cup. You know, it's huge. So, yeah, it's really trying to find that level. We're currently trying to find our feet. We expected a lot more readers in England. It's not actually been like that. You know, that in terms of our downloads, it's only been about 45 to 50% from England. So, you know, we're constantly trying to adapt to the product. We're not going to give up until we find that magic solution. And then from there, we'll have to keep adapting. But yeah, that's how we go about it.
Yeah, and I think there's a big potential market. We know that England has a ton of grassroots futsal. People up at 6 a.m. taping courts, people moving out the goals, doing everything to build the sport out there. And the country has a lot of potential for it. It's just the footy administrators need to really pick it up and take it up to the next level. But we do see the sports growth in the United States. Canada, we have a lot of work to do over here, but still a ridiculous amount of futsal potential out here. In Australia, Australia's been around for 40, 50 years, and hopefully with their club championships, currently, taking place out there, it's going to be something where I think you guys will have a reduction in England being a 40 to 50%, and hopefully having a little bit more pickup in other English-speaking nations out there. But for people who are not native English speakers that want to learn English, and you're a futsal fan, this is the perfect way to start learning English, no?
Yeah, and we've looked into before releasing Spanish copies as well, because there's not, although people are trying to learn English over here, it's not actually as strong as it could be. It's a bit difficult for them. I think they just like looking at the pictures maybe, but that could be a good way of them picking up some words. But yeah, as I've said, it was a bit of a shock. We expected a lot more from the UK. It's actually not been like that, which has also been quite exciting to see the extent of readers that we've had around the world. It's been crazy. The amount of messages we've had from people in every corner of the planet. And it's thinking, well, they're reading what we're putting out there. We don't claim to be experts. We just try and put whatever we think is beneficial to people. We're still learning the craft ourselves, and we're just trying to find, like I said, that magic solution of what do people want to read. Do they enjoy stats? Do they enjoy analysis? Do they just like some subjective opinions? And that's it.
And the magazine is very data driven. You see it in the graphics, you see it in the numbers out there. Where did you kind of start? You said you're relatively new to it, but you've done a heck of a job so far. What's the biggest thing for you guys in putting data and stats out there, and particularly explaining newer concepts to coaches such as XG? Maybe you could even explain that, for people who are new to coaches or new to coaching in futsal out there. Where's your specialty lie? What's your process like? And explain, I guess, the little terminologies that you're going through, particularly with XG, if you don't mind.
No, the thing is, I've just been a coach. I was a teacher by trade as soon as I came out of uni. Like I said, living at a military college. So I just coached on the side. I coached a university team, Nottingham Trent. I had relatively good success with them. And then bit by bit, I decided, well, there's elements of data here that we could use. You start recognizing patterns that you see, and then you see at the top level, you see the impact it could have. And as I've said, I'm not here to claim that Excel is the way forward to make your team guaranteed success. It's such a magical sport, futsal, that it's not that. But I do think it's that 20%, that 30% that maybe the countries can learn from as well. That recently I posted the stats about set pieces. England have a really, really low percent of set piece goals, under 10%. It's just not the same. The World Cup and the Euro stats are ridiculously similar. I can't even begin to describe how similar they are between the World Cup and the Euros. And that was really interesting. So I thought, right, well, I'm just gonna, keep tracking as much as I can. In previous tournaments, I've now built a database of thousands of goals. And yeah, that's where the passions come from there. But in terms of XG, so it's a huge thing in football at the moment. That was written by a collaborator called Ben Pickford, and his work is incredible. So definitely try and follow Ben Pickford on Twitter. But yeah, XG is expected goals. So it's based the probability of scoring from certain areas. And he built that model based on watching loads of goals and seeing that, well, how many times would a shot from that area go in? And obviously, as an example, within the 6 meter area, there's a high probability of scoring goals. Now, interestingly enough, what we've been tracking is that zone is now changing. So we now see a lot of goals around the 10 meter point or a bit further. Players like Lozano can hit a ball so well from there. And yeah, that's expected goals. But obviously, it's an adaptable model, and we're just trying to offer interesting models that people could maybe use that could change maybe how they coach. So, as an example, as I said, this has been the Euros of the left-footed goal. But when you're training your goalkeepers, how many left-footers do you have in your squad? So is it really relevant to them? It's also at the top level, you're looking at about 75% of goals are one touch. Now at training, do you make your sessions one touch finish as a rule because of that? Or do you just leave it or just score with however many? And that's the magic. The magic of data is that you can guide your training sessions.
So when you're creating, your data and putting them in, and in the magazine, it's just chock full of great stuff. I love it. Are you actually watching games and clicking on a spreadsheet, or you're writing down on a piece of paper and then enter it in? I mean, it's just such like a unique way of calculating, and it's never really been done before in futsal, at least in the English language side of things. Is it something that, you were just, kind of learning right off the top and just saying, maybe I'll try this method, maybe this method's better, have you mixed it up, or is it just something where, you found a nice little, comfort zone to do it?
Yeah, well, basically you just nailed it on the head. I've just thought, right, trial and error of the best system. Obviously, as I said, with Photoshop, it's basically just been from scratch, tutorials, trial and error, right? What is interesting, in my opinion, as a coach, what would be interesting to track? Laptop open, notepads open, PowerPoint open, Excel open. And then, yeah, at the moment, I've reached a point that I'm able to do it with coordinates, which is a very common way of doing it in football. And, those coordinates, then you can match up, right? How many shots did that player have? And it's just a few clicks away. But yeah, it's really been trial and error, and at the end of the day, it's a lot of work. I say fortunately enough, in October I gave up everything and decided to move over to Spain. I've just decided to throw everything into on the court. Taking a huge risk with that, and fortunately enough, I have the time to watch 4 or 5 matches every single day. And at the end of the day, that's how I've managed to build up a database. I understand that people don't have that time to do that, but that's why I'm trying to do it, and to try and help as much as I can.
Now, are you available for hire from clubs or international teams that may be looking for high performance data that's easy to read and implement into their systems?
Interesting. We put out a survey recently, and it was one of the little things we looked into. And obviously, I think a few teams in England, there's a little contrast of opinions there, because my brother's coaching in England. So I think obviously I understand that there's a bit of clash of interest there. But in terms of internationally, we've had a few coaches reach out to us and ask what we got on these, what we got on them. We've had a few coaches that have been at the Euros, assistant coaches and whatnot, liking a few tweets we've put up. And that makes our day. That really does make our day. People retweeting, any like on our content really does make our day, because it makes those hundreds of hours seem worth it. And when people see the magazine, we know it's not perfect. Like we're trying to adapt it. There might be a few typos in there. At the end of the day, we're not magazine producers, even though we're trying to. And they might realize it, they might not. But I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours have gone into some of the stuff we've done. And some of the stuff that we've not even posted out. Like I said, I've got thousands of goals, thousands of data points. So yeah, if coaches were interested, I love networking with people. So if they just want to drop me a message, I'll happily chat futsal for hours, as we have done just now. So.
I love it. And I can tell you right now, with the data in the magazine, if he doesn't have everything that's published, any coaches out there, any players, players got to be interested in this too. And players are going to become the next coaches, let's be honest out here. So if you need some of the best data in the world, you got to talk to super nerd David. Okay. All right. He's going to get it going out there. I love it. I'll tell you right now, I wrote you guys, I said, I don't care how many issues you come out with. If it was weekly, monthly, I'm your first full-time subscriber across the board. Shut up and take my money, because I love it. And I'm not a coach. That's it. I used to coach recreational, and play recreational. I never had the talent to get to the level. But with the work that you guys are doing, I think you're going to inspire a heck of a lot of coaches and players to move forward on it. Now, again, for those who don't know, On the Court, available at onthecourtcoach.com, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Proper
that's right.
website. And then on Twitter, Instagram, where do we find you, your brother, and OTC?
OTC is OTC_coach as well, or if you just search On the Court, I'm sure we'll pop up. And then, yeah, our surname is probably the best way to find us on Twitter, Tapia-Owens. I think my brother is J-Owens. So that's J-A-T Owens. I think that's his Twitter. And mine's 12DTO. So, yeah, any messages, like I said, I just love it. At the end of the day, I've taken this risk because it's what I live for. I live for futsal. So I'll happily chat any interesting points that people have, anything that they've recognized. I had a conversation a few days ago about the amount of shots that are on the left wing. It's amazing the bias that all teams have towards that wing. Now, why is that? We'll happily discuss stuff like that all day. So
I love it. That's the kind of stuff that we like to hear. It's different. And, likewise, I mean, I didn't think there was a lot of English podcasts or, shows. And, like I said, we're on the soft launch, but the numbers are pretty nice so far. And I think your numbers are going to only go up out there. I love the work you do. Every person in futsal, every person who knows someone who likes futsal should be picking up OTC. That's On the Court magazine, the best in the world, bar none. Fight me. I'll challenge you on it because it's that good. David, thank you so much, my friend, for checking us out. I can't wait to put this up on Spotify, YouTube, and we're going to be on iTunes tonight for all you Apple heads out there. And Sunday, we got the championship, third place match coming in. We got about one or two more guests coming in, and then we're going to do a live, hopefully live, post-game show from the UEFA Futsal Euro Championships out there. David, you got to come back on the show, and you got to get your brother on here. You got to get him a day off.
I'm going to that's unforgivable. What he's done tonight being at football, that's unforgivable.
I got the solution. In high end for the Spanish Cup, pints are on John.
100%. I just wanted to say, Chris, thank you so much once again. Like I said, every bit of support that you've given our project has just been incredible. Every little retweet, the shout outs that you've given to us constantly, it's massive. Like without people like you, we simply can't keep going. We can't grow and we can't give back to the community, which is, what we're really trying to do. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time again this evening for me, whatever it is there for you. And, let's meet up in high end. Let's make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, listen, the pleasure's all mine. Any likes, shout outs, tweets, everything's been well deserved. It's one of those projects that you sit there after reading it and going, God, I wish I created this first. It's so fantastic. And it's just brilliant. So I think everybody should pick it up. And I hope, the gamble pays off, moving to Spain, starting a life in much sunnier climates than England or Canada provide. So I'm very happy. And I will definitely 100% see you at the Spanish Cup over in Spain in about just over a month's time. So, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. David Tapia-Owens and his brother Juan. Yes, we said Juan, not John. Give you props because you're an awesome graphic designer, buddy. Everyone go pick up OTC On the Court magazine. As soon as you stop listening to this, go to the website, pick it up now. 3 magazines for £2 British. You're insane not to. All right? We'll see you guys back tomorrow for the next edition, and we're going to have some real fun for the rest of the championship. David Tapia-Owens, you're awesome. Your brother's awesome. Keep up the great work at OTC, and thanks for coming on, my brother.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.